Good evening. Um, as you may notice, this is a new venue for this year, and that is because of the terrible Magefa, the Coronas Magefa that we are in. So I've basically been confined to my home for the last 4 weeks. Other than I went to the yeshiva to record the Thursday night shir in the yeshiva, but not wanting to be matria, someone to have to always record me, and also being more machmir when it comes to staying at home. So I've decided to try to record this in the confines of my office, my study, and I trust that that the technology will work and everybody will be able to hear and see the shear, and hear the shear as well for those people that were listen by audio. So this week's parsha is Parshas Tazriya מצורע, and in Tarshas, the beginning of Parshas Tazriya מצורע tells us the mitzvah of Ishaki Tazriya V'Yolta Zochar U'Yem Hashmini Yimo B'Saro Losei. So this is really the makar of the mitzvah Sasei Deraisa that we fulfill Mila, B'Yem Hashmini, and if not possible, later on. So even though we already learned about mitzvahs Mila in Parshas Lech Lecha, when Avram Avinu maled, and when he maled Yitzchak, but the Rambam famously tells us in the Parish of Mishnayos LaHarambam in Masechta Chulin, 7th paragraph of Masechta Chulin, that all the mitzvahs that we fulfill are only the mitzvahs that we were nitzava for Moshe Misinai. Meaning, yes, Avram Avinu did mal, but the reason we mal is not because of Avram Avinu. We mal is because in Parshas Tazria, the Torah told us again, that's the Yesod that the Rambam tells us in the Parish of Mishnayos, and therefore even mitzvahs that were given, in Sefer Bereshit, Gidan Nasha, it's not because of them, it's because of Kibul Moshe Misinai. That said, therefore, this is an appropriate parsha, as we have done in past years, to speak about mitzvahs Milah. Tonight, there's somewhat of a different twist on that. And that is, as you all know, and people who will be listening to this year next year should still realize that what we're going to talk about over here is applicable even beyond this hopefully ending Magefa. But there have been literally myriad of shilas that have been asked over the last 4 or 5 weeks about the halachic implications of what the coronavirus is demanding from us. No social distancing, no minyanim, etc., etc., etc. All types of various shilas. And I'd like to, and the Paiskim Manenu, the daily Paiskim of our generations have spent a considerable amount of time answering these shouts to different shayalim. And among one of those Paiskim, which we mentioned also last week, is Rav Asher Weiss, who's a Paisik in Eretz Yisrael, a well-known Paisik, a prolific mechaber, a wonderful speaker, and a wonderful person, and a really a Talmud Chacham Muflik Ma'id. And he's been asked various shilas over this period, and therefore I wanted to speak about a shaila that he talks about b'negei biker mitzvahs Milah b'mei hakorona, mitzvahs Milah in the times of the coronavirus. But as I mentioned, even though in the future we will hopefully not ever have to deal with this again, but there are halachic implications in Regea all the time and universally. The first shaila that he deals with over here is the following shaila. This is a shaila. He was written by Hagon Rav Pinchas Goldschmidt, Harav Aroshi, the Kiddush of Moscow. From Rav Pinchas Goldschmidt, who is the chief rabbi of Moscow. For those of you on Eretz Yisrael Talmidim, you may remember that Pinchas Goldschmidt learned here, I guess in the 60s and the 70s. He's gone on to become the chief rabbi in Moscow, and he's very active in terms of the European Board of Rabbis. So he got a shaila from France, in which he passed it on to Rav Asher Weiss to ask him what his opinion is. What's the shaila? Hashiltainis betzorfas osu lasas bris milah mechashash hidapkus b'machla al-yidei hametzitza, which means that France assered performing bris milas because of the chashash of it being contagious because of the metzitza. B'nei hakila karvim v'nevuchim ketzad linhaig, the community in France is very pained by this. Mitzad echad amr chazal, on the mitzvah, concerning the mitzvah of milah, ki alecha haragnu kol hayom, the people have been meisher nefesh for millennia to mal, uv'chol davar dor masa nashal mitzvah niskavazu shenichrusu ala yukim obrisis. Therefore, mitzvah of milah, as we all are very chosh of a mitzvah people in meisher nefesh, as most recently in the Soviet Union. But here is not a situation that they're answering milah because of it's a anti-religious thing. It's a havar al hadas, which there's a chiyuv sometimes to be meiser nefesh. But this is stam minei sakonas nefashos, pikuach nefashos. V'kvar meisu yosem mimei achavrei hakihilos hayehudis betzorfas. And in France alone, there have been hundreds of people who have died. And their shaila is, should they obey the edict from the French government not to perform the milas? Now, the truth of the matter is, I'm a little confused exactly what the problem is and what the issue is. Is it the pshat that the French government is answering the metzitza aspect of the milah, because we can readily understand that if a person does metzitza b'peh, he is subjecting both himself and the baby to potential virus, and therefore that's what their issue is. It's the metzitza part. If that's the case, then this is not really much of a shaila in my opinion, because then you don't do metzitza b'peh. Now, I know that there is literally a century old or centuries old issue about metzitza b'peh, mitzvah not b'peh, mitzvah yeah b'peh, not b'peh. Different kehilas have different minhagim. Yeah, I heard from my Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Uda Mezechet Tzadik Livracha, that in Litva they did not do metzitza b'peh. I don't think in Germany they did metzitza b'peh, but in places like Hungary and more Hasidic places, metzitza b'peh was standard operating procedure. You have to do metzitza b'peh. That said, that even though you normally practice metzitza b'peh, but under the circumstances, if the issue and the problem is the metzitza b'peh, then don't make metzitza b'peh. I mean, Rab Yitzchak Ochad, Inspector, Kovner Rav, Rashkabag, Shokol Yisrael, he and many other poskim were matter to do it with a tube, or even according to my Rosh Yeshiva, they used to do it with a sponge. Squeeze a sponge on the Mokam Milah and extract the blood. So go ahead and announce that from now on, no metzitza b'peh, and therefore it wouldn't be an issue. In fact, I heard, now again, I did not check this out, I heard that Reb Shlomo Miller, the famous Reish Kollel in the Kollel in Toronto, and a well-known Pesach in his own right, etc., he said blankly that today, no more metzitza b'peh. You use a tube, a metzitza tube, it's a well-known keli, and everybody has to adhere to this under the circumstances. So if that was the issue in France, that the problem was metzitza b'peh, then fine, don't make mitzitza b'peh. Well, so apparently that was not the issue. The issue was, I guess, that because of mitzitza b'peh, therefore they were afraid that people will do the milah, they'll do mitzitza b'peh, and they couldn't convince the authorities that no, we won't do that, and therefore the French government assered and forbade all milahs, period, no ifs, ands, or buts. So the emes is that that I think now if the shaila is okay, the government banned mitzitza the milah because their chayshish may be for social distancing or that it's they don't trust the people, whatever it may be. But the truth of the matter is, as we all know, postponing a milah is not the end of the world. And this is done on a regular basis. If the child is too yellow, the child is sick, etc., etc., we do this all the time. Which means, yes, there is a mitzvah, uvayayim hashmina yimol, a mitzvah tamal on the 8th day, granted, and that's a special mitzvah, and no one wants to, chas v'shalom, demean it or denigrate it. But so then, what's the issue over here? The French government say you can't do milas, can't do milas. You can't do milas, so you don't do milas. You make a milah shlabizmana. You wait until this thing passes mit Hashem bakar mamish, and then you make the milah. So then, what exactly was the shaila that was posed to Rav Asher Weiss? So Rav Asher Weiss zeroes it on this point. Umischabet ani beniden didan de lametav yediosi reshuyes habriyes b'medinas acheres v'afela shenafshu shepogu koshes ademacha corona legozu levalta mitzvahs milah. Meaning to say, listen, there have been 45,000 deaths as of today, April 22nd, in the United States of America from the coronavirus. There are over 100,000 people that have this virus, but there is no state in the union that forbade performing the milah. And even in other countries in Europe, they're performing milahs. Babies are born every day. So then, what is this about? That the French government, in its infinite wisdom, decided, no, this is a sakana. We can't let this happen. So are you mechuyev to listen to the French government because they think it's a sakana? Bishlemo, the child is yellow, or the child has some kind of illness, or the child was sick. So then that is a bona fide real the sakana is a suffix sakana. Okay, so you have to understand. Pikuach nefashis is deicha kol atera kula. It's certainly deicha milah b'yem hashmini. And therefore you don't mal. But if this is the French government, then who says you have to listen to the French government? And they forbade it? No, we don't have to listen. Which means we have to be chayshish for sakana. Yes. But if not a sakana, it's because of the French government, for whatever reason, thinks it's a sakana, potential sakana, suffix sakana. The French government is being kaveh for us. And if you go to 5 French doctors or 10 French doctors and they tell you there's nothing wrong with making a milah, so you have legitimate medical authorities to be saimich on. So because the government says so we should give up milah bismana, b'yem hashmini, because of some bureaucrat in France. The truth of the matter is, I heard of a milah here in the United States, that the milah consisted of 3 people. The moyel, the avi aben, the father, and the baby. And they came into a room, and the father was the kvater, the father was the sandik, the moyel was the moyel, the baby was the baby. V'neimar amen, b'yikar shema b'Yisrael. That's 3 people. Nobody's machmir on that. So that is the shaila. The shaila is, do they give up milah b'yem hashmini, because the French government thinks it's a sakana? Are you mechuyev to go ahead and to listen to that? And that is how Rav Osher Weiss poses the shaila. Ach kimduma shahadas lisene sheyesh ladam linoig lefi takonas harashuyah shebemedina shebeseicha hugar. Says Rav Osher Weiss, a chiddush. You have to follow, which is really not a chiddush. You have to follow the laws of the land. And if the country that you are in, the government says don't do it, you have to shtaltzu and you have to abide by the government in spite of the fact that there may not be a real basis for this. And there's some when it comes to health issues, like the psak of the government, and therefore Rav Osher Weiss says that's why you have to listen to the government, because the government said so. And you do not have the right to say it's stupid, this is not real. No, government said so, the government says so. And then Rav Osher Weiss adds something that is very, very important and very negea all of us as we live through this incredibly difficult period. And that is the Chil Hashem aspect. Umelvad hachumra hayesera sheish linoig b'chashash pikuch nefesh. V'yeser b'chashash haspartzus magefa. You have to be so careful with this magefa. Yesh b'zeh chashash otzum shel chilul Hashem. In other words, yes, we have to keep our distance and we have to be machmir, and we should not have all these secret minyanim or backyard minyanim or no. The government says no. The government says no because and there's some activities on the part of Frand people that have inspired the ire of the authorities. And I mean, I don't know the statistics, but there's an overwhelming amount of Frand people that have died because of this. And all you have to do is open up your Hamidi or some Jewish periodical, and you can see what seems like an endless list. And that's because people they're smarter than the government, and we don't have to keep this, and there's no chashash. And what was a result of this? Umishum shem mizalten by Ros hashiltonos, because people abuse the government. V'roifim goyim tzvichen lahamid alat misakana lahatzel Yehudim shemefirin es hararos, and the non-Jewish doctors have to put themselves in sakana, taking care of these people, these Jews, because these Jews, there's a levaya and 1,000 people show up, and they fight on the government. So how do you think a doctor or a nurse or an ambulance driver feels? I have to put myself in sakana, come close to a person because these Jews have to do it their own way? So there's the Chil Hashem aspect. And therefore he concludes, Mishum kol zeh nireh shelemarbei hatzar. In spite of the fact of the terrible pain that you feel that you can't perform Mila Bismana, ein monai selaliches Mila Bismana, betikva shebekorav tavar magef hazumen ha'olam, to postpone the Mila with the hope and the prayer that this coronavirus will pass. V'nuchal lachzer v'nekayim es kol mitzvos Hashem b'shleimus u'v'simcha Refuah is he, etc., etc., etc. That is Rabbi Weiss's psak, which is an interesting psak. You don't make the Mila Bismana. Why? Because the French government said so. And you have to listen to the government. And then he goes ahead and makes the very strong point. But not listening to the government is a chil Hashem, can create a chil Hashem. And it can also create anti-Semitism. Let's not kid ourselves. We are living in times that we never thought we'd have to live through again. People are forgetting Poway, California, and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and Jersey City, New Jersey, and Muncie, New York. How do you think the anti-Semites out there are looking at these Jews that flaunt the laws, and they spread the illness? In any times of magefis and troubles, you always look for scapegoats. I just heard on the radio today that in Romania there's been a lot of anti-Roma. Roma is the technical word for gypsies. Gypsies have always been a minority. They've always been looked down upon. They're saying in Romania it's the gypsies, the Roma, that are spreading it. Why? Because they're a scapegoat. It's not a major leap to go from Roma to Jews. So therefore, that's why he paskins that they should postpone the Milah. Then he has another shaila from Rav Pinchas Goldschmidt, also that it's negeya, particularly the Russia, the former Soviet Union. Bekihiles rechaike shebemizrach Europa shein b'hem moel kavua. These small little towns in Eastern Europe. I don't know if he's referring to this, former Soviet Union countries or countries like Romania, Bulgaria, whatever it may be, and they don't have a moel kavua. So what do they do with babies? So they're moelim that are like itinerant moelim. They go from town to town, from place to place. When umoelim shnoig levakres akilas midei pam, they come to these communities from time to time. Kais chayshishin lavoi ben anoshim levakar bebeisam befrat etzla anoshim shenem mukarim lahem v'lomultinakas. Yeah, so the person lives in he lives in Berlin, which has a Jewish community, or he lives or he lives in London, lives in England, and from time to time he travels throughout Europe. But the Moel is hesitant to do that now, because I'm going to go to Sofia, Bulgaria, and I was invited. There's a family there that wants me to mal. I don't know how zohir they are in hygiene and social distancing and the sanitizing, etc., washing hands. So I should go and mal and be with this family and put myself in a suffix sakana, and therefore they're hesitant to go ahead. And the question is, hayim chayovin. Hey, neged netias libom linsaya k'dei lamale es mitzvasam la'achnis yada yisrael levrisa shel Avram Avinu. Very interesting shaila. I don't want to put myself in sakana. Am I mechuyev to do that? It's a suffix sakana. But am I mechuyev to go ahead and to do that? So he goes ahead and shtelz to, which is a shal which we've spoken about in the past. He shtelz to a psak from the Minchas Yitzchak, Dayan Weiss, who paskined, and this is again negeya, that the moel, here we live in Baltimore, Maryland. Okay, so there's a small Jewish community, not much of an Orthodox Jewish community in Columbia, Maryland. It's about 30 miles away, or Frederick, Maryland, which is 60 miles away. And they're Jews there. So they have a baby. A baby was born on Shabbos. They want you to come to Columbia or to Frederick or to Hagerstown to maul the baby on Shabbos. So I have to leave my family. I have to be in Nowheresville for Shabbos. Am I mechuyev to do that? So Diane Weiss says, yes, that's a moyel's responsibility. That's part of the job. That you have to inconvenience yourself in spite of the fact that you'd much rather stay home and have your cholent in the beauty of your own home. But that's part of the responsibility because you're the moyel. That is, however, he says, but if I'm worried about my health, that's where we draw the line. Yes, I have to give up my convenience. I have to give up on my cholent. I have to give up on all the things, my minion or whatever it may be. But I don't have to sacrifice my health. What's going to be with the baby? Well, in the meantime, the father is an onus. The father's mechuyev to mal. Father can't mal himself. Onus rachmane patre. He's temporarily potter. And when this passes, b'karav Eretz Hashem, then the moil will go to Sofia, Bulgaria, or Bratislava, Slovakia, or wherever it may be. He does, however, say, Ach kol ze ledina. This all mikra din. On kevin shaloi neda kamazman yavar adasher achaim yachzu l'shigra v'aday roy lishtadal b'minas ha'efsher sheyesh lidchais mitzvah zunis kava. It's very chosher for you to do it. You're not comfortable doing it. Nobody's telling you you're mechuyev. But there's a chosher of a mitzvah, and he doesn't say this, but perhaps if the moil doesn't show up, who knows what's going to be. Maybe the person's not going to mal at all, or maybe, as we'll see in the next shaila, he'll get a pediatrician to do it, or a urologist to do it, a non-Jewish urologist, and then the person will be not gemalt, because the goy akum shemal is not a kosher milah. Therefore, a person should really make a strong cheshbon nefesh, try to set it up in a way that he minimizes the sakana, but again, that's his personal choice. And the final shala that he declares the Gabi mitzvahs Mila is another shala from Rav Goldschmidt. The moil doesn't come. But there's a non-Jewish doctor that can perform the Mila. Now, we all know that there are two parts to Mila. One is called Mila, which is the Chatechas Orla, the taking off, the removing the foreskin with the sakin, with the scalpel, with the sakin shamila. And then there's a thing called Priya, which means a person goes ahead and pulls back the membrane that covers the aver. So a lot of times you have, by us, a father wants to become the mitzvah himself. So he gets a moil. The moil goes ahead and sets everything up, gives the knife to the father. Father cuts off the orla, which is not a big deal. And then the moil goes ahead and does the priya, which requires expertise. So this non-Jewish doctor says, listen, I know you want to circumcise your son. I'll set everything up for you. You'll do the chatecha, you'll do the hasora sa'arla, and I'll do the priya. Should he do that? Is it better than not maling for the foreseeable future? So Rav Asher Weiss over here is, this is very poshut, very famous mishnah from last mishnah in Perak Rabbi Eliezer de Mila. Mol v'lei para ki ilu lei mol. A mila without a priya is nothing, is garnished. Mol v'lei para ki ilu lei mol. So and since priya is an integral part of the mila, and the halach is mufurish that a non-Jew, since he's not Matzuv and Mila, cannot perform a Mila, Therefore, a non-Jew cannot perform the Bria. So here, half a loaf is worse than no loaf. Let the baby be as is. Won't be the first baby in history that wasn't mauled on the 8th day or the 18th day or the 80th day. But they have the moil do the Mila, and then the Jew, the father, do the Mila, the Chatecha Orla, and the guy do the Priya. No, that's Ki'ilu Loimol. And one last Shiloh, which is not Negea Mila per se, but it is Negea again, obvious tie-in to this week's Parsha, and that is Isha ki Tazri'a v'yolda, talking about birth. So the Shiloh that he was asked again among these many Shilohs, it was a 75-page kuntris that he published, all these coronavirus Shilohs. The Shiloh's like this: a woman is going into labor. Her husband accompanies her to the hospital, drives her to the hospital, but it's in the midst of the corona epidemic. So you can take your wife to the hospital, you can take her into the maternity ward, and then bye-bye, you've got to leave. You can't stay there for the birth, can't stay there for being after the baby's born. No patients are allowed in. That's the reality in today's life. So then what then is the husband doing? The husband isn't with her during the birth. He's not there offering words of encouragement, words of comfort like they do today with husbands attending the. So what does he do? He drops her off, takes her in, drops her off, then he has to leave. So is he allowed to do that? You know, Bishlei Motakot, to stay with your wife. So there's this concept for which we're called Yisuve Daita, to make sure that the woman is relaxed and that she's calm and that she's not worried. And therefore, that is the heter for a husband to go ahead to drive or to take his wife to the hospital, Mishum Yisuve Daita, which is making her feel comfortable. We don't want a woman who's giving birth to be uptight and worried and upset, etc. So that's the heter. So Rav Asher Weiss says that yes, of course, it would be better if he could stay there, but it's Yisuve Daita for the husband at least to take her to the hospital and to take her into the maternity ward. And even after that, he has to say goodbye, good luck, Zaymet Mazel. But then he has to leave. But that is enough of a Yisuve Daita, to put your wife in a cab and say, okay, call me when it's all over. No, the woman will be upset by that. She'll feel alone and abandoned. And therefore, as Yisuve Daita, you can even go with her to the hospital in spite of the fact that you won't remain with her in the hospital. As to the Shiloh, whether he can come back, so there he says, if you're able to walk home, it's walking distance, then the husband should walk home. If that's not feasible or practical, whatever, then he can go home al yedei akum al yedei non-Jew. But going with her and taking her, whether either by cab or Uber, or if the situation demands even going in your own car, but once you take her there, you have to leave her there. You're allowed to take her there, leave her there, wish her mazel and bracha, and then you can come home, and even al yedei akum, it's not feasible to walk, then you go ahead and you do it al yedei akum. And that, Rabbi Isai, finishes the halachic part of the shir. And now, Rabbi Isai, I want to share with you some thoughts on the Parshas HaShavua, but since I'm simultaneously recording this audio for the subscribers and the downloaders on the Yad Yechiel website, I have to shut off my recording machine, and it takes a little while for it to warm back up. So there'll be a minute or about a minute pause till I'm able to do that. So Just hold tight for a minute or so. So I'd like to share with you tonight, for Pashas Tazriya מצורע, a couple machshavas from Reb Baruch Sorotzkin, Zecher Tzadik Levracha, the tells a Rashiva in the 60s and 70s, and maybe a machshava from his father as well, Reb Zalman Sorotzkin, who was the Lutzker Rav. The pasuk says in Parshas Tazriya V'ro HaKayin V'timei Oisai. So when a person has a question whether he has a nega, tzaras, so the only person that is allowed and authorized to determine whether this is in fact tzaras or not is the kohen. So the pasuk says, "V'ro hakohen v'timei oisai." So there is a interesting chazal which we've actually spoken about in past years, and that is it's a Teres Kehanim. The Teres Kehanim writes that if you have a kohen who doesn't know Hilchos Negoyim, it's a very complex and very difficult subject matter. For anyone who've learned that Masechta in Tyrus certainly knows. So the kohen doesn't know. You come to the kohen and they say, "Hey, what's this?" I say, "I don't know." So what does he do? So he's allowed to go ahead and to ask a Talmud Chacham, a Jew, not a kohen, not a Levi, just a regular Jew. And then the Yisrael, or whoever it may be, the Talmud Chacham looks at the nega, va'omer l'kohen hasheite emor tameh v'hu tameh emor tahar v'hu tahar. And then the lashon of the Teres Kehanim is, he says, va'omer l'kohen hasheite. He says to the kohen hasheite, hasheite literally is an idiot, and he says, say tahar. Tahar, then it's tahar. Say tameh, it's tameh, then it's tameh. Even though the kohen doesn't really know the first thing about Negoyim. Strange halacha. I once heard from my Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Udeman Zecher Tzadik Levracha, that used to point out that there's a tremendous lesson in that whatever the kohen says is what is because, as we all know, tzaras comes, one of the things that comes from is lashon hara. And a person does not realize the koyach hadibur, the power of speech. So in order to bring home the lesson to him, you know how powerful speech is? Kohen says one word, tameh, you're stuck. It says tahar, you're in good shape. From one word. That brings home to the person the power of dibur, of speech. But that's not what Rav Baruch Sorotzkin goes on. He goes on a question that's often bothered me in the past. The lashon of the Teres Kehanim is that he says to the kohen hasheite, the kohen the idiot, the kohen the fool, say tameh, say tahar. Why call him a sheite? There's another word in Talmudic nomenclature for such a person. It's called amaretz. And in fact, the Gemara uses, the Gemara says, Mamzer Talmud Chacham is kainim l'kohen gadol amaretz. When we want to go in and say if somebody doesn't know something, we don't call him an idiot. We don't call him a shaita. You're an amoritz. You're an ignoramus. Why over here does the Torah for the Torah's Kehanim refer to as this kain who doesn't know anything as a kain ashaita? So he tells to Rabbi a very interesting mechilta, and he says he saw this in his father's sefer, Znaim L'Torah, Zalman Saratzkin sefer, that he brings the lashon of the mechilta. Lenitna Torah lidreish. The Torah was given ela la'oichle hamon. The power to darshan Torah, to understand Torah, was given to the oichle hamon, the people, the dor hamidbar, that ate mon for 40 years, and on a lesser madrega, the Mishnah, that the Mechilta says, Vishnayim lahem la'oichle truma. You know who else was given the koyach HaTorah, to understand Torah, to know Torah? The oichle truma. Who's that? The Kehanim. Why the Kehanim? So he says, very good. The truth of the matter is, Rabbi Isai, we would all be tremendous Talmidei Chachamim if we could learn most of the day. But unfortunately, there's something called parnasa that gets in our way. And we have to devote years and years and years of our life to make a living, which we're obligated to do. In fact, this is what the Gemara says in Masechta Brachos, at the beginning of the 6th parak, Hanig Bohem Minig Derech Eretz. That's the shita of Rabbi Shmuel, and that's the way for most people, that's the way it is. So we have to make a parnasa. As a result of that, we don't have all that time to devote to learning. And therefore, we are not on the League of Talmid Chacham of Rav Chaim Kanievsky, or people that have the ability, not only the time to learn all day, but the ability to learn all day. And that is why the Torah gave the Kehanim the Chof Daled Matnas Kahuna, the 24 Matnas Kahuna, among them Truma and etc., the Korbanos, because they don't have to make a living. You know why they don't have to make a living? You know why they shouldn't have to make a living? Because they have to learn. Why do they have to learn? Because they're the Moirei Hayra, they're the Malamdei Torah to Klal Yisrael. And therefore the Torah relieves them from the possibility, or the responsibility rather, of making a parnasa so that they'll be able to devote themselves to learning. So the Oichle Hamon, the Dor HaMidbar, who didn't have to work for anything, they were provided mon every single day. They didn't have to change their clothes. Never became outdated. They never wore out their clothes. Everything was taken care of. They had no dagas parnasa, nothing. There was air conditioning in the summer and protected, heated in the winter. So what do you have to pay for? There are no bills. So Mamela, Oichle Amon, they were given the Torah Lidresh. The Kehanim, which are freed from also large extent of having to work, they're also Darshei Torah. If a Kohen doesn't have to work and has all this time on his hands to learn, then why on earth don't you know Masechta Negoyim? What were you doing with your time? You have all this time in the world to learn and you don't do it. You're not just an Amoritz, you're a Shaita. You're a fool. Because you have the ability to learn, the time to learn, I didn't take advantage of it. That's why he's referred to not merely as an Amoritz. An Amoritz is a person that has to work on whatever it is, 12 hours a day, to eke out a living. And he can learn an hour, a half hour a day, doesn't know much. He's an Amoritz, not a Shaita. But you, the Kohen, you don't know anything about Negoyim? Why don't you? Learn Masechta Negoyim. I know it's hard, but get someone to teach you. So you're wasting your time. For that you deserve the title as a shaita. And one does not have to be a big Baal Musar to go ahead and to draw the analogy and draw the line over here, connect the dots to the period that we are in. Many of us, many of you, are off from work. There are many people that can work from home, but there are many people that are furloughed, that are laid off. This is the time, Rabbi Isai, to learn. And that's why you go online, you have all these shiurim, the yarekalas, etc. Because what else are you going to do? There's only so long you can read the paper. And today the paper is so depressing, who wants to read it anyway? But that's a different story. So we don't want to be called shaitim. We don't be called fools. Here we had all these weeks, hopefully just weeks, and we weren't working. And what did we do with our days? So therefore, this is what the Torah says, that's why he's a shaita. Because not taking advantage of your time is being very foolish. That's one ha'ara that he says. And I want to share with you another ha'ara. And he tells to the very famous Rambam at the end of Hilchas Tumas Tzaras, where the Rambam writes and he says, Inyanim shamisaper loshen har mishtanim kiras beisai ze'enu miminag shalolam rak nesu pella bivnei Yisrael v'chein b'tzaras abeged ki machalei shayach rak misheish b'rachayim. Tzaras, Rabbi Isai, is not leprosy, and tzaras is a nace. Homes don't get negoyim al pi derech hateva. Begodim don't get negoyim al pi derech hateva. This is a nace min hashamayim, and it's a nace min hashamayim to tell the person that not he's suffering physically, he's suffering spiritually. And that's why the Gemara famously says in Masechta Erechin, a whole list of things for which the Negoim come, most famously Lashon Hara. Gemara says for Gasus Haruach, for haughtiness, for Tsaras Ayin, for being stingy, a whole list of machlas for which Tsaras comes. So this appears miraculously, first in our houses and then our begodim, and then it gets closer and closer until it appears on our bodies. And that's why the pasuk says that the kohen has to go into the person's house, and he has to. So the pasuk says, "V'oba asher lo habayis." That not only does the kohen come into the house, but asher lo habayis, because the kohen has to look at the person and try to determine what's wrong with you. What are you doing right? What are you doing wrong? Because this is a spiritual malady. It's not a physical malady. It's a spiritual malady. And therefore, that's what the kohen really has to examine. Look at the person's life, his anhagos, his actions, how he acts, how he talks, etc., etc. And once the kohen determines that, then he can go ahead and prescribe for him the needed tshuva that's required for him to do to heal his soul, which will then heal his body or his house, etc. So he stelled to Rabbi Isai the Haftarah this week, in which Naaman, the Sartsov of Melech Aram, he was the commanding general of Melech Aram. His name was Naaman. I guess he was the equivalent of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the United States military, lahavdil, I know lahavdil, but whatever. And he had Soras, and he tried everything under the sun. Sinishka Holfen didn't help. He heard of a Navi Hashem. He heard of a prophet, a miracle worker. So he convinced to go to the Navi. So he comes and knocks on the Navi's house. The Navi goes ahead and sends his shliach and says, "Who is it? Find out who he is. What does he want?" So he says, "Naaman Sarsova Melech Harom, the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He's Tzaraz. He wants to know what to do." So one would think that Elisha would come out of his house, look over the person, speak to the person, and then tell the person what to do. No. Elisha doesn't even give him the time of day personally. He tells the shliach, go tell him to be teufel in the Yarden, to dip in the Jordan River. Doesn't talk to him, doesn't look at him, doesn't even give him the courtesy of going out to meet him. No, Elisha is not antisocial. Why didn't he do that? The answer is because when a person had an machla, an illness, he went to the Navi told him what's really wrong with you. And the Navi knew over here, Benavua, Baruch HaKodesh, that Naaman's problem was he was a balgaiva. He was a haughty person. And that's one of the reasons Saras comes. As we said, Gasus HaRuach. So Elisha's trying to cure him. And he's trying to tell him, your problem is you're a farstunkene balgaiva. You're an arrogant, disgusting individual. What you have to do is work on your arrogance. So I'm not even coming out to see you. Tell my shamus. Go tell him. He wasn't being rude. He wasn't being antisocial. He was doing what a Navi asked to do. And let us get to the bottom of this. Tell this person what he has to do. And that's what he did. And again, Meir of Rabbeisai, I think there's an obvious connection to the situation that we're in. And oh, how we desire and what we would give if we had a Navi to tell us, Rabbeisai, the reason that Rebbeinu Shalom is doing this to us and to the world is because of X, Y, and Z. And you correct X, Y, and Z, and the Magef will go away. And that, unfortunately, Rabbeisai, is one of our biggest chesronos. We can live in an era where we're free to practice our Yiddishkeit, where Torah flourishes, where there are more Jews learning Torah today in yeshivas than there was in pre-war Europe. Amazing society. Chesed, Laroiv, all these different Chesed organizations were great. But probably not all that great. There's something wrong. What it is, no one knows. Except the Navi. That's among our tefillas. We should daven, Rebbeinu Shalom, please give us back our Nevi'im so we can know what on earth we are doing wrong. Good night, and I hope you enjoyed this new venue and this new venture, and we'll see if we should do this in the future, if it works. Have a good night. Have a good Shabbos. Have a good Chodesh. Stay safe. Stay alone. Don't flaunt the laws. Don't be an Ibra Chacham. We should all be Gesundheit. Good night.